Hey, courageous school leaders. Welcome to Lead Beyond Limits, the space where school leaders like you gain unfiltered insights from educators, uncover the hidden barriers holding your staff back, and get practical strategies to lead with confidence. If you're ready to tackle the real challenges in your schools and create the clarity your team needs to thrive, you're in the right place. Let's dive in and get to work.
Hey, hey, courageous school leaders. It is Monday and it is about that time. My name is Dr. Damia. For those of you that are new here, welcome. Glad to have you. For those that have been here and pop your head in every once in a while, welcome back. So this is the space where we stop spinning and start leading with some clarity and confidence and systems that actually serve. So today's topic is naturally going to be infused with some AI, and pardon the noise if you hear noise in the background. I'm at a conference at a hotel, but I had to make sure that I get this in. So if you hear some noise, that's what it is, okay? So today's topic, well, the title for today's discussion is Culture Can't Be Coached in Confusion, right? So this is going to be another 4-part mini-series from tech, because we talked about a lot of tech, meaning AI, not actually using or creating tech, but using technology, right? So it's from tech to trust and how you're building the human infrastructure of AI leadership, right? So we're going to focus on how you as school leaders use systems to align your culture and your practice. So today we're going to talk about a specific structure, a framework with the acronym STRUCTURE. But before we dig into that, I want to share something with you. Let me take you back to a fall morning at a middle school I was supporting. It was the kind of morning where, the air was crisp, but the bell had just rung, and you can hear the shuffle of students transitioning from homeroom to first period. So when I walked in the main office and saw Principal Williams hunched over at her desk with a highlighter in her hand, scrolling through a Google document titled Week 5 Instructional Look-Fors, she looked up and she said, Damia, I'm exhausted. I've rewritten this walkthrough template 3 times this month. Every week I change it hoping it'll stick. But my team still isn't using it consistently. And teachers are starting to feel like we're just nitpicking, right? You hear the lack of consistency there, right? So I can actually feel it in her voice, right? The pressure, the fatigue, the quiet frustration of someone trying to lead with intention, but feeling like the systems keep slipping through her fingers. So this was her valley, right? She wasn't in a crisis. She wasn't in chaos, but a deep misalignment between what she wanted to build and what her current systems were allowing. So we sat down naturally, and I asked her, so what are you trying to reinforce through these walkthroughs? And she said, clarity. I want to know what good instruction looks like without me having to say it at every single meeting. And right there, we found our anchor. We simplified the tracker, used AI to analyze the trends and the walkthrough notes so that her team could identify patterns without having to guess. So we embedded one key trend into each upcoming staff meeting, right? Not as an announcement, but as a conversation starter. 3 weeks later, she emailed me. We just finished our debrief, and my assistant principals actually noticed the same patterns I've been seeing for the first time in months. I feel like I'm not the only one carrying the culture right now, right? Like carrying the torch and the culture, the instructional culture. That was her peak. Now, because we added more structure to a system that she was trying to build, right? And it's not because we added that, but because the system reflected her values, not just adding the system or building the system, but it reflected her values. That's the alignment that's so necessary. And it started doing the work with her, not just because of her, right? And so culture is how things are consistently done. It's not what's on the wall. It's not the college banners on your walls. It's what shows up in the hallways, in the classrooms, right? It's a system of being. That's what culture is. So this episode isn't going to be about how you charm your staff. It's going to be about structure. Okay, so this is a framework I've used with school leaders to help them free up their time, to help clarify expectations, and turn strategy into a school-wide behavior, right? That's embedded your culture. So grab your clarity and confidence workbooks. If you don't have it, if you don't have the reflection guide, send me a direct message and I will send you the link. It's absolutely free. I'll send you the link and so you can get access to the guide. So if you have it, open it up right now. Okay. So let's walk through what each letter of the structure framework actually means, right? S, set the outcome. So you need to ask yourself, what do I want the system to produce, right? So examples could be a walkthrough. You want instructional alignment. Morning meetings, what is the outcome? Like, what do you want that system of morning meetings to produce? You want it to set a community tone setting, right? So without an outcome, there's nothing to evaluate. That's the very first thing. So how AI can help with this is you can use AI to help you define outcomes. So for example, you can say something like, based on these PD objectives, write 2 outcome statements to measure success in teacher practice. Right? You must absolutely have your outcomes in mind. The T, the first T in structure is you need to tie it to a purpose. So this is where you need to ask yourself, what value or mission priority does this system protect? Right? So it's the outcome. And then what is this system protecting? So if staff can't answer the why, they'll just go through the motions. They need to know the why. So when you're in meetings and you have your staff together, right? You are saying to them, like, this is not just about compliance. This is how we protect our students' experience. And have them go back to their why. And I talk about this a lot in the first 3 chapters in my book about connecting to your why. In the very first chapter, it really digs into you as a school leader and your why. And chapter 2 is really about your leadership team's why. And then chapter 3 is your school-wide, like your staff and their why. Understanding that why and aligning it to the work that you're doing is absolutely critical, because then you're just checking off a box. So it shouldn't be that. This is about protecting students' experience. Okay. So the first S is the outcome, right? What exactly, what do I want the system to produce? So set the outcome. T is tie it to a purpose. The R in structure. A lot of you may be familiar with this. You're going to reverse engineer the actions. Think of backward mapping, right? Using the backward design. So this is where you're going to ask yourself, what 2 to 3 behaviors will drive this outcome weekly? So examples of this would be an instructional system. What instructional system will drive these outcome this outcome weekly? Weekly co-planning. For a cultural system, what 2 to 3 behaviors will drive this outcome weekly? Daily leadership huddles with tones where you're setting the tone, right? With tone setting. Think about the actions, the behaviors. So one way that AI can help with this step in the framework is you can create an AI prompt, and one prompt that you can use is what 3 repeatable behaviors support teachers implementing small group instruction with fidelity, right? That is, I'm thinking, so what 3 repeatable behaviors support teachers implementing small group instruction with fidelity? That is a very clear AI prompt that you can use that will produce some behaviors and give you a baseline of some behaviors that you can use. Now, will AI get it wrong? It might, right? And you really need to tone it to your school and what your school needs. But AI helps provide you with at least a baseline and some suggestions, a brainstorming, if you will. Okay. So that's the R. You need to reverse engineer the actions and think about what that looks like. The U in the structure framework is understand the benchmarks. And this is where a lot of people miss the mark. So we come up with, all of these plans around what is it we want? What do we want it to look like? What are the behaviors that need to happen? But then how do you know that you're meeting the mark? So this is where you ask yourself, what does success look like after 2 weeks, after 4 weeks, after 6 weeks? You have to create benchmarks. And I'm not talking about waiting for the district to give you, surveys and assessments. Internally, you and your leadership team need to create benchmarks on what success looks like every 2, 4, and 6 weeks, right? So benchmarks will allow for mid-course corrections before things fall apart. You don't want that to happen at the end of the quarter, right? So an AI prompt that you can use is suggest benchmarks to measure progress on, and then you can insert whatever system. So suggest benchmarks to measure our co-planning sessions, right? Suggest benchmarks to measure that. You can put that in AI. It'll spit out or provide, maybe spit is not the right word, but it'll provide some benchmarks for you to consider. Again, you do not have to use, I would say this, not have to, never use what AI gives you right away. You have to take it and humanize it, right? Because that's what this mini series is about, is building the human infrastructure of AI. So make sure that when you are, again, adding those prompts, that you are taking it with a grain of salt and using it as a brainstorming tool. So the prompt, again, for understanding the benchmark is suggest benchmarks to measure progress on collaborative planning in a school setting. Let's just say that, okay? The C in the structure framework, communicate. It should be over in parentheses before the word communicate. Over communicate the workflow, okay? So this is where you need to ask yourself, do all stakeholders understand what this looks like, what it sounds like in practice, right? Because a lot of times we talk about the why and the alignment, which is really critical, but now what's the how behind, how? So what does it look like? What does it sound like? And very often, what does it feel like? What do your students feel like when they're meeting success? What do you feel like just as a human being when you know you're being successful with your students in your classroom, right? So that's what you as a leader should be asking yourself when we're talking about the C and the structure framework, is communicate the workflow. And I will stress, over communicate the workflow. Do all stakeholders understand what it looks like and sounds like in practice? So you just don't send a memo. You have to model it and repeat it over and over and over and over and over again, right? So just as a reminder, if it's not reinforced, it's not embedded. If that means that you need to go in a classroom yourself as the instructional leader to model what it looks like in a classroom, get in that classroom. I love getting in classrooms and modeling what instruction looked like for my staff. Absolutely loved it, right? It let them know that, one, I'm a teacher first and I know good instruction. And then I can actually have conversations with them. I used to model what it looked like and have my coaches come in and watch me and my staff have the conversation. The power behind that is amazing, right? So that's a part of you communicating the workflow, what it's supposed to look like and sound like. And in this instance, when we're talking about supporting teachers, what does it feel like when they're supported? What does it feel like for you or the coach to support your staff? The T in structure, the last T in structure, is track the trends, okay? This is so important. Please track the trends. Use AI. You can use AI to help you summarize staff feedback, which I say so often, exit tickets, right? Leadership notes. A lot of times now when we're in meetings, we have tools that we use. I know I use tools to help capture notes, like documenting the conversation and then summarizing it, right? If you're not using one of those tools and you're capturing notes either like on a Google Doc or something like that, copy those notes into an AI tool, whatever it is, whether using Claude or DeepSeek or Chat, and give it the prompt that a prompt similar to, like, what trends and barriers are emerging from these notes. It'll provide you with those. Read it through thoroughly, please. Then once you look at those notes, and you can actually share it with your team together once you look at it and clean it up, then you can say to your team, because of your feedback, we're adjusting X, Y, and Z, like whatever it gave you that you agree with, right? Sound good? Tell me what you're thinking about before I get to the last three letters. Tell me what your thoughts are. Which one of these is actually, how is this resonating with you and the work that you're doing, especially thinking about right now in the summer, what does this look like moving forward? Okay, the U in structure is update. We have to update as needed. This is where you're going to ask yourself, what's flexible without breaking the system? So this is where you, as the leader, adapt with intent. You're not panicking because your whole school, your team is following your lead, right? So you're adapting here with intent, thinking deeply around what pieces can actually be flexible in this system that you're creating that won't destroy the entire system. So how you can do this is think about creating 10-minute review windows in your professional learning communities or your team meetings to discuss what needs tweaking, right? This is very similar to how you are creating your benchmarks. So you're not waiting to the end. You're checking in every 2, every 4, every 6 weeks. When you're checking in on these benchmarks to see how things are progressing, this is when you can identify what updates need to occur, what things need to change or shift. Again, you're not taking the system all the way to the end of the quarter. By then, it's too late. Okay? R. The last R. The last R is reinforce with consistency. Here goes that word again, consistency, right? This is where you're going to ask yourself, where can I reinforce the system visibly each week? So try weekly email blurbs, start of the meeting norms, shout outs for alignment, right? This has to be done repeatedly and consistently because it needs to be in your staff's face all the time so that they see okay, they won't forget it. They know that it's coming, right? They know that this is something that we're doing. This is reinforcing a culture, right? This is how we operate. That consistency is what's going to help build and solidify your culture. And just because, and then it's going to become second nature, right? Where you're not going to have to remind them about that particular thing all the time. Something else may come into place to shift the culture, right? It's going to become second nature. Praise behaviors that reflect the system. This is a part of the visibility, right? You're establishing a culture of celebration and success and wins, right? And acknowledging effort, because that's what your staff need. They need to feel like you're supporting them in that way. And then finally, the last E, and we all know, I bet you can pretty much guess what this is going to be, evaluate. So I would even say evaluate and expand. So this is where you're going to ask yourself, is this ready to scale? Because if you really think about this framework, there are 2 points where you're actually checking in to see if the system is working. It's at the benchmark part of the structure, right? Which is you understand the benchmarks, knowing what they are, creating them to know like success looks like this at 2 weeks, success looks like this at 4 weeks. So that's one place where you are actually evaluating. And then the second place where you're evaluating is when you're doing the updates. And then finally, your major evaluation here is leading to how you can expand, right? How can you scale the system that is working, right? So not every pilot is going to become a policy, but strong systems can actually, they can travel, they can grow. Okay. So I want you to keep this in mind as you are thinking about how you're integrating AI and technology into your instruction, because that's what we're in school for. As the school leader, you are the instructional leader. In addition to many, many other things, right? Your primary goal as the leader is to maintain, like, make sure instruction is strong and support those staff and support and create the system so that instruction can be strong and consistent. So how, again, are you going to build your legacy? And this is a part in your clarity and confidence reflection guide where I ask very frequently about legacy, right? There's always 3 parts in your clarity and confidence reflection guide, right? It's one, how you're controlling your narrative, how are you leading with confidence, and how are you building your legacy? And so that's what I want you to think about now. So if you're exhausted trying to hold all the vision and do all of the work, it is time to ask yourself, is it the people or is it the process? And this is a real heavy question, because as a school leader, I used to think that, oh my goodness, it's the people. Like, we need to hire better people. And sometimes that is the case. But now I'm going to turn the mirror to you and ask you, is it your process? What process do you have in place that can shift behaviors so that your culture shifts in your building? Most of the time, when you're asking yourself, is it the people or is it the process? Most of the time, it's the system or the lack of a system, to be honest with you. I have been guilty of that myself as a leader. We all have. It is like, you're human. You're not perfect. You can't do this work alone. So your system should work for you, not because of you. Because if it's working because of you, that's compliance. When you're gone, it's gone too. But if you have a system that's working for you, it's going to remain in your building if you leave it. Okay? So here's what I want you to do. In your reflection guide, I have some questions for you that I need you to think about. I know it's the summer, probably at the beach. Hopefully you're watching the replay. But when you do watch it, I need you to answer these 3 questions in your reflection guide when you're thinking about the next school year. So the first question is, what system am I building or repairing right now? The second question is, what part of the structure framework have I skipped? And it's on the screen for you to see. And then the third question is, where do I need support? And this is a real question, because school leaders, I know, I was there too. You don't like to ask for help because you don't want to feel like you're a failure. But I would argue that when you don't ask for help, you are failing, right? You're failing yourself, most importantly, and then you're failing your staff and your kids if you're not asking for help. It is okay to ask for help, okay? So if you direct message me the word structure, I'll send a structure planning template. So DM the word structure and I'll send that to you. And remember, on my website, www.drivynllc.com/ed leader prompter. So on my website is an ed leader prompt builder. So if you're unsure of what prompts to create, this is an absolute free tool. You don't have to give me your email or anything like that. It's free for you to use. You go on that site, you plug it in, you give it some information. There's like three or four steps. You plug it in, You copy, you paste into your Claude or your GPT or your DeepSeek to get an output. Okay. So you don't have to, be concerned about what prompts should I use, the most effective prompts. There's a tool that can help you create your prompts. Okay. And if you're serious about aligning your leadership systems this summer, I want you to join me in July for an AI strategy lab, right? The strategy lab is specifically going to work on custom built workflows, some AI ready communication tools, and systems that will save you time and strengthen your team, specifically as it relates to instructional culture. Okay. As always, what do I want you to do? I want you to lead beyond limits, and I will see you next week. In the meantime, stay cool out there, and I will talk to you soon.